How's it going, YouTube? I'm Landon and welcome back to another Most Amazing Top 10 video. We have now learned that there are a ton of people who are able to outlive insane prison sentences. Well, these prison sentences are insane for multiple reasons. Some of those reasons are just simply because of the length of time these people survived in prison and they live to see the day they're released. And also we have learned that there's been a lot of people in jail who have served all this amount of time for a conviction that they never did. They were falsely convicted. They were innocent the whole time. So this right here is the top 10 people who outlived insane prison sentences part 5. If you guys want part 4, you guys can click right over here, and also I'll put part 4 in the link in the description below. So starting us off on this list at number 10 is Susan Maria Mellen, who was a grandmother who was just walked free from prison after 17 years of being locked up behind bars. We're talking about Susan Marie Mellen, who was sent to prison after she was convicted of killing a homeless man. A Los Angeles County judge overturned her conviction, saying that her attorney has actually failed to properly represent her. Susan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Well, she's lucky now because this case was actually relooked, it was reopened, and that was because the people linked to the crime ended up being 3 gang members, and yeah, Susan had nothing to do with it. They actually found the real people. So they're like, oh, if they are the ones that committed this crime, who the heck are you? Next up, number 9, we have Edward Mitchell, who was just served 20 years behind bars. Back in 1996, he was convicted of robbery. Edward was actually the right guy for the crime that happened back in 1996, so he's not innocent on our list. He robbed a 65-year-old man's jewelry store. Edwin was able to grab a diamond ring worth about $16,999. Of course, he was caught and he was sentenced to wait to 20 years. So Edward just simply outlived his sentence and he was released back into society. Well, usually people who have served that much time, they know the bad atmosphere of, like, they know what prison's like, it's bad, they don't want to go there. So you get released, you become like a good boy, right? Well, for him, no, not what happened. Edward, he didn't learn his lesson. He actually robbed another jewelry store. This time he took a 9mm pistol into a pawn shop and he stole a bracelet, a wallet, a cell phone from an employee's lounge. Well, we don't know what his sentence is because he's actually still on the run. He's currently out there being crazy. So that's all the information at the time of this recording. He could be captured by now, but right now there is a warrant out for his arrest. At number 8, we have another man who has served 20 years behind bars. This right here is Juan Rivera. He has been in jail for a couple decades for rape and murder of an 11-year-old girl. While in prison, Juan has claimed his innocence. Well, after 20 years, he has been cleared by DNA as being the wrong person convicted for this crime. Juan said no amount of money could ever sum up to 20 years in prison, but he did win $20 million in a settlement. I mean, that is a lot of money, but 20 years of your life is gone. That's a long time. Anyone would go insane. Moving into number 7, we have William Barnhouse. Back in April 21st of 1992, a 22-year-old woman was raped behind a vacant building, and this took place in Muncie, Indiana. Well, this woman described to her best ability in the situation that she was in, what the man looked like, the man who raped her, to police officers. Well, that's when police officers set out and they found the man to this description. Officers took him back to the crime scene where they flashed a flashlight onto his face, and the woman identified him as the right guy. Well, in court, no one believed this man to be innocent, so the defense team then presented evidence to prove that William did suffer from mental illness his whole life. They probably did that so William can take a lesser sentence, a lesser punishment, because he was pleading insanity, he wasn't in the right state of mind. Well, they actually found him guilty, and they found him in the right state of mind for the crime. They deemed him as being capable of committing the crime, and he was sentenced to wait to 80 years in prison. Well, just this year, the Innocence Project and the Wrongfully Conviction Clinic at Indiana University stepped in and performed their own DNA testings, and it concluded that they actually have the wrong guy. When this was proven, Williams was immediately released. This is just a sad story. Number 6 is Timothy Bridges, and he served 25 years behind bars. That is a lifetime. He was sentenced away for rape and a burglary. Timothy was linked to this crime when 2 pieces of his hair was found at the scene back in 1991. Well, recently this case was reopened up. Well, it was a discovered that there was evidence that police failed to turn over to the district attorney's office before his trial. It was also discovered that police wanted this man to be convicted to this crime because they actually made threats to people who made testimonies at the trial. So this guy went to jail because of what people said and not because of hard evidence. When the evidence was finally tested, Timothy actually wasn't even the right person. Apparently, this has become a problem of police interfering with investigations. There has been some cases where police believe they have the right suspect and they don't want the suspect to go free, so they make sure that this person is gonna get locked up. Whether the evidence is planted or, lack of evidence is given to the right people, they're gonna make sure who they believe committed the crime is going away for sure. Number 5, we have Anthony Sanborn, and he has served 27 years behind bars for the murder of his childhood girlfriend. His girlfriend was identified as 16-year-old Jessica Briggs, and he was sentenced to 70 years behind bars, but just recently it was proven that a key witness actually didn't even see the crime. So Anthony was released immediately. Imagine serving 27 years behind bars after someone had just killed your girlfriend and the whole world believes that you did it. I couldn't imagine Anthony's mindset. This murder was back in 1989 and the key witness testified, and the key witness was also the sole witness to the crime, but apparently the witness was threatened by police to tell the courts exactly what the police officer wanted them to say. But it was proven that the witness couldn't have actually seen this crime. Why? Well, they were actually legally blind. I mean, is this real life right now? What a fail. It just sucks it took 27 years to figure this one out. This one just really upsets me. Next up, number 4, let's talk about Christopher Abernathy. Christopher has served 28 years behind bars for rape and murder of a 15-year-old girl back in 1984 in a park forest. Christopher was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But instead of walking out with the cane at an old age, Christopher was able to hold his head up high, and step after step he was able to leave the prison where he maintained his innocence for 28 years. I am not even 28 years old. Imagine just my whole life just locked up away, living the prison life. I bet after time he probably thought, you know what, maybe I did do this crime. Why else am I locked up here for almost 3 decades? I mean, he probably went insane. Number 3, we have Randolph Arledge, who hasn't been living in society for the past 29 years. Back in 1981, 21-year-old Carolyn Armstrong was found on a dirt road. She was naked from the waist down with 40 stab wounds to the neck and chest. This trial went to court and Randolph was the main suspect, and despite the lack of evidence connecting this man to the crime, he was convicted of murder and he was sentenced to 99 years in prison. 2001, the Innocence Project stepped in, reopened the case. They were able to secure DNA testings of the physical evidence with the cooperation of the county district attorney's office. The testings concluded that the evidence found at the crime scene, which was some hair samples, wasn't actually Randolph's. It ended up being the victim's hair and hairnet. There was a new suspect, David Sims, and when he was confronted, he admitted he was the last one that saw her alive. That was his hairnet at the scene, and you know what? It was probably him then. I mean, everything is adding up here. So this is when Randolph was exonerated by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. At number 2, we have David McCallum, and he was convicted of murder when he was just 16 years old. He has served 29 years behind bars. Well, he has just been freed after a judge overturned his conviction, saying it was actually based on a false confession. The decision to free David was made at the recommendation of Brooklyn District Attorney Ken Thompson, who actually has helped turn over 10 convictions so far in less than a year of taking office. This is insane. Just think about that for a second. Less than a year, he's overturned 10 convictions. 10 people were wrongly imprisoned. I mean, what is going on in Brooklyn? Why are innocent people being locked up for decades for no reason? Why aren't people doing their jobs to find the right convicts who are still on the streets? Finally, number 1, we have an insane story about Joseph Sledge. Joseph was convicted of killing a mother and a daughter, and this was back in 1976. This took place in Whiteville, North Carolina. Joseph has spent 40 years behind bars as an innocent person. Now at the age of 70 years old, he's now a free man. A judge claims that the system has actually made a mistake. DNA experts confirm that none of the evidence collected in the case, which was hair, there was DNA, fingerprints, well, it didn't belong to him. It was a district attorney attorney who was not originally involved in the case who actually reopened the investigation. This is when they found the many mistakes in the case. When you're convicting someone of such harsh crimes and sentencing them away for like life for a very long time, it should be a slam dunk. With confidence, the legal system should know 100% that they have the right person. I mean, what a crazy video. But thank you guys so much for watching this. Make sure you guys stay tuned for the next most amazing top 10 video.